Okay, it looks like everybody's in and got audio now. If you could just turn on your camera so we can confirm quorum. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to call the fifth meeting of the Audit Committee to order. This is a virtual meeting held during the COVID-19 emergency. Please check the city website for current details on COVID-19 services and impacts. And meetings can be viewed through live streaming on YouTube or the city website. The City of London is committed to making every effort to providing alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing, or advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility at london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I see none. We have no consent items, no schedule items. We have 4 items for direction. I'm going to deal with them in the following way. We're going to do items 1, 2, and 3 together. I'm going to have Mr. Price present those, and then we'll deal with item 4.4 separate. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Price for to walk us through those 3 items.
Okay, there, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. So I will start by covering the, sorry, I'm just getting the document open. There. The internal audit summary update document, which is really just a summary memo summarizing the work that we've done since our last meeting. There's been 1 report issued since the last meeting, which is the SAS application review, which we'll cover after this these 3 points. And we're now connected with each of the audit areas that we're working towards completion for the rest of the year up until the end of December for the other projects. And that'll be covered in the dashboard. So if we flip over to the dashboard on page 3, you can see the various projects that are ongoing. You can see the SAS application review is complete. The traffic management process review is restarted and in a stage of completion at this point. And then the other 3 are really just in the planning phase right now, but expect those to take off and most of the work be done in November and maybe the first part of December for those three reports. The plan is still about 19-20% complete year to date on the right hand side, and the timing, you'll see the timing that was, I think I alluded to it in our last meeting that there had been some delays from vacations and that sort of thing. So certainly that's not our gold standard as far as issuance of reports, but we did issue that the SAS application review report in about 85 days from completion of the work until the final issuance to the audit committee.
Okay, questions on those 3 items from committee members? Okay, seeing none, I need a mover for those 3 items. Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Van Holst. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by hand. All those in favor? All right, that carries.
Motion carries.
Oh, sorry. I jumped ahead of you. That's your job. Sorry. Item 4.4, which is the SAS application review. I'll go back to Mr. Price to present the results of that review.
Yeah, thank you. So as a high level background, what we did was this was a review of the SAS applications within the city and how they're managed from when they onboard the systems to the ongoing maintenance of those systems, more from a security perspective, but also from operations perspective. Through that review, we did interview mostly IT staff, but also did contact some people in the business side of the city. But the focus was mainly an IT type review. The 2 comments outcoming from that were specifically, I guess the theme was more making the policies and procedures for the city more adapted to the new reality, which is that there's more cloud and software as a service type applications in that environment. and making the training more specific was the first comment, to address some of the challenges and risks related to that, and help to educate some of all of the staff actually on how that might impact their business, and what actions they might need to take. So they've committed to have that training updated in the first quarter of the next year in 2022, which seems reasonable to us from that perspective. And then a lower priority item was just making some of the policies and procedures more explicit to include references to SaaS applications and cloud applications. And that, again, they've committed to update that in the second quarter of 2022, which again seems reasonable and is a low risk priority item.
Questions for this item? Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to either our auditors or to staff, what might be an example of a non-sanctioned SaaS application that an employee could be using?
Through the chair, I can address that if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So the risk with SaaS applications is that really anyone could sign up for an application and potentially put data into the cloud that might expose the city, either from a data breach perspective or even from a financial perspective. And examples would be really anything that you could install on your phone and that sort of thing, and then start using in a capacity in delivering services for the city. But I think as well, it would also include things where sometimes normally what would require to implement a new system, you would need to get approval from IT, get that installed on a server and that sort of thing. With SaaS applications or cloud applications, sometimes you can circumvent those controls by just going to the cloud provider and getting those applications. So anything from financial reporting or HR systems and that sort of thing could be procured. And we did not encounter any of that in the review that we did, but those are the risks that these processes and the training would help circumvent, would be to make sure that people are aware that they should not do that, and they still need the approval of the appropriate IT functions to ensure that the information is secure in those applications. Does that answer the question?
I think that's fine. I'm aware of there are many software as a service applications out there. I'd wonder if there was ones in particular we were concerned about. So thank you. That was my question. I see Councillor Turner has his hand up. I think I may have a couple other questions, but I'll let him proceed.
Okay, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Price, for this audit. I'm wondering if the scope included, and I'm not quite seeing it here, but if it included questions of privacy with respect to PHIPAA and MFIPA, and how cloud-based applications might expose the municipalities to some concerns. I know in my line of work, whenever we look at SaaS options, we have to be really careful not to have software that houses our data in the US, because it may be subject to warrant or investigation through something like the Patriot Act, for example, and not subject to the laws of Ontario, but rather to a foreign country or to a foreign legislative environment outside of that, which is within Ontario. So did any of that apply here? Was there any look into those things and whether there's an exposure risk beyond the IT cyber threat components?
Yeah. Through the chair, sorry, I heard an echo. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
The scope did include considering that, but more generally, just as there's an onboarding procedure that the city does have when there's a new SaaS application that does go through the proper process, that it's evaluated as far as what data is going into the cloud, what is the exposure for the city, whether it's private commercial data for the city, or to your point, private information that may be exposed, and then evaluating the privacy and how that information is secured in the cloud. So that was part of the review that we did.
Great, thank you, Mr. Price. So what I'm hearing is that it was evaluated. There are appropriate controls in place and that we don't have any material exposures on that front.
So the scope was to look at the process. We didn't look at the exposures themselves, but we understand there's a process for onboarding systems.
Thank you.
Back to Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you. So I'm looking at page 15, the audit procedures performed, maybe 4 up from the bottom. It talks about reviewing the documentation with regards to governance and oversight, visibility and accountability. I think we talked about accountability being shared in the training already. I was interested in visibility. How is it that we see if software as a service applications are being used by city employees?
So we did look at that, and there is network monitoring for that in place, and some procedures, some technology in place that can detect that, is my understanding.
Okay. Mr. Chair, perhaps through you might ask our staff to just describe what we have in place. I'm interested in that.
Sure, thank you. And through the chair, what we have in place right now are next generation firewalls. And those firewalls do a very good job of managing where employees can go on the internet and what they can do external to our internal network. We are looking at more advanced technologies, and that will be centered around things like a cloud access broker, which would be part of a multi-year budget ask that would be coming in the forthcoming multi-year budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess I've seen that function every once in a while. Some websites that I would access from home when I come into a city hall, there seems to be some challenge, or that firewall is in place. So I can say that that works. So I think that's the end of my questions for this, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any further questions from committee members? Councillor Turner?
One more quick one. I'm not sure if this was in scope, and if it was outside of scope, please disregard. But was there any assessment of the process in determining procurement of SaaS versus enterprise solutions within house, mostly from kind of the perspectives of where there might be interoperability opportunities. The challenge with SaaS is that most of those products are all independent, and where enterprise has the opportunity to integrate across the corporation.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm happy to take this one, Jim. We have a multi-level filter for any application or piece of technology that's being brought in. And the first step is to look at the business need and if it can be addressed with one of our enterprise systems, to the point that you're making. The second step is, if it can't be, we look to commercial off-the-shelf solutions as the second level in that strata. The third is, of course, then in-house or external development. So within that, you can see there's a strata in a way that is supporting both cost and technology. To the councillor's point about integration, it is a natural challenge when you go to a SaaS application that you lose some of the functionality that you would be able to obtain through integrated enterprise systems. It is a natural trade-off. Thank you.
Great, thanks. That's helpful. Sometimes it's helpful if you can own the data associated with the SaaS, where you might have the SQL server access or something like that. But yeah, I recognize that you're probably doing everything you can on that front. So I appreciate the response.
Further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll look for a mover for this. Councillor Turner, seconded by Counselor Van Holst. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, then we'll vote. All those in favor?
Motion carries.
Great. Okay, we don't have any deferred matters or additional business. We do have one confidential session item, so I'll look for a motion to go into confidential session. Councillor Turner, seconded by Ms. Higgs. All those in favor for moving into camera?
And that motion carries.
Okay, we'll just be a second while we switch things up.